Hey, I'm here to write this out, like my therapist suggested. They said it might help me process everything that happened in the past few years, and honestly, I'm willing to try anything at this point. It started in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. That's when I met Sonia. I was just 23 back then, trying to figure out my life while the world was falling apart. She was a couple of years older, working as a nurse, and seemed like she had it all together. We met in the most random way, at the grocery store. I had held the door open for her, just being polite, and it led to this quick conversation. We laughed about how chaotic grocery shopping had become with empty shelves and people hoarding toilet paper. But somehow, we ended up talking about life in general, how overwhelming everything was at the time. I don't know if it was her smile, the way her eyes lit up, or just the fact that she seemed so genuine, but she made that gray, stressful day feel a little brighter. Sonia was different from anyone I had met before. She had this magnetic energy about her. She was kind, funny, and smart. Her job as a nurse made her seem so selfless and strong, even when she was drained from work. It was inspiring. She would come over after long shifts, utterly exhausted, yet still find time to listen to me vent about my struggles. I had just lost my job due to the pandemic, and she'd sit with me, offering words of comfort that felt like lifelines in a storm. I fell for her fast. We weren't just surviving the pandemic, we were doing it together. There were moments when everything felt hopeless, but having her beside me made it bearable. Sonia wasn't just my girlfriend, she became my anchor. We shared everything, inside jokes, playlists, long walks in the park. I remember how she'd talk about her favorite books with so much enthusiasm, or how her quirky sense of humor would make me laugh even on the hardest days. She made the mundane feel magical. This was my first serious relationship, and I was all in. For a while, it felt like we had this unbreakable connection. We had each other's backs through everything. My unemployment struggles, her exhausting shifts at the hospital. Looking back now, I realize I ignored the cracks that were starting to form. I believed in us so much that I missed all the signs of what was really happening. Things started to shift right before our one-year anniversary. Sonia came home from work one night, and something felt off, different in a way I couldn't explain. Normally, when she was tired or stressed, she'd still make an effort to call or text with warmth. But that week, her messages felt cold, distant, like she was just going through the motions. That night, when she finally came over, I could feel the tension between us. Her usual smile wasn't there. Instead, she looked drained, not just physically, but emotionally too. I had cooked dinner for us, hoping to cheer her up, but the conversation was strained. Sonia barely spoke, and when she did, it felt forced. I tried everything to lighten the mood, bringing up funny stories, our favorite inside jokes, but nothing seemed to reach her. As the night dragged on, my anxiety grew. I kept wondering if I'd done something wrong or if something had happened at work. I couldn't hold it in anymore and gently asked if she was okay. She sighed, avoiding my eyes, and told me she was just stressed from work. But something about her tone didn't feel right. It was like she was saying the words, but they didn't carry any real weight. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Sonia fell asleep quickly, but I stayed up, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Was she unhappy with me? Was it someone else? I didn't want to believe it, but my gut was screaming at me that something was off. I know it was a terrible decision, but I went through her phone. I hated myself for doing it, but I needed to know. What I found shattered me. There were messages with a man I didn't recognize. At first, I tried to tell myself they might just be friends, but the texts weren't innocent. They were flirty, sexting, even, and there were plans to meet up. My heart sank as I kept reading. It wasn't just him. There were messages with other men, too. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Sonia had been cheating on me. For how long? The entire relationship. Every memory we shared, every moment I thought was special, now felt tainted. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened as I sat there, trying to process it all. I called my brother that night, crying like a kid. I felt broken. The next morning, I confronted Sonia. She cried immediately, big, dramatic tears, and said she was sorry. She begged me not to leave her, even threatening to hurt herself if I did. I was 24 and inexperienced with something this heavy. I fell for it. She suggested we try an open relationship. I was desperate to make things work, so I agreed, even though it killed me inside. She let me take all the blame, convincing me that I hadn't been enough for her. I promised to be better, but deep down, I knew this wasn't what I wanted. 4 months, I let her dictate the terms of our relationship. She kept talking to other men, claiming it wasn't the same ones she'd been cheating with. She wanted to bring other men into the bedroom, and I agreed because I was scared she'd leave me if I didn't. It destroyed my self-esteem. I felt like I wasn't enough for her, like I was constantly failing. I convinced her to move in with me, thinking it might fix things. Maybe if we were under the same roof, I could control something. But it didn't help. She kept pushing boundaries, wanting to bring other partners into our home, asking for things I wasn't comfortable with. I tried to stand firm, but it was like quicksand. The more I resisted, the more powerless I felt. The relationship became a nightmare. She stopped being intimate with me but continued seeing other people. A year passed like this, and I could feel myself changing. I was angry, bitter, and full of resentment. I started doing things out of spite, flirting with other women, leaving texts and pictures on my phone where she could see them, even coming home late smelling of perfume. When Sonia got upset, it felt hypocritical. How could she be angry when she'd been doing the same thing to me for so long? But none of it brought me peace. Instead, I just felt hollow, like I was losing pieces of myself every day. Things had gotten so twisted that I couldn't recognize the person I had become. My brother had started noticing how unhappy I was. He would say I seemed sad, distant, like I wasn't the same person anymore. I hardly saw my family. I was ashamed of what had become of me. By 2023, I was barely holding it together. Sonia and I had become nothing more than roommates. We barely spoke, and we certainly didn't sleep in the same bed anymore. In the meantime, I had started seeing another woman, just to try to make Sonia jealous, but it turned into something more. The woman I was seeing actually started to fall in love with me, but I didn't want that. I didn't want to hurt anyone like Sonia had hurt me. So I ended it with her. That's when I finally woke up. One day, I just looked at myself in the mirror and asked, "What the hell am I doing?" The guy staring back at me wasn't the person I wanted to be. I had spent years of my life tied up in a relationship that wasn't real, that wasn't healthy. Sonia had sucked the life out of me. I had to end it. I told her I couldn't do it anymore. I wasn't going to waste any more of my life with her. She needed to leave. At first, she refused. She tried to turn everything around, telling me I couldn't just kick her out of our place, that it was our place. But I stood firm. It was my place, and I wasn't going to let her continue to poison my life. She started to cry, calling me dramatic, telling me I was throwing everything away. She said that I had agreed to the open relationship, that I knew what I was getting into. She called me a weak little boy, and said I was a quitter. But I had had enough. I told her she was the one who gave up when she decided to cheat on me. She had betrayed me and lied to me for too long. I tried everything to make it work. I didn't give up on us, she did. The argument escalated, and I started packing up her things. I didn't want anything left of hers in my place. I even started carrying out small things I knew were hers, planters, bottles of wine. I didn't care. I just wanted everything gone. That's when it turned physical. Sonia started pushing me. She got violent, trying to stop me from packing her things, and I had to lock her out of the house. She called one of her partners, and before I knew it, I was face to face with him on my front porch. I was just defending myself, but things got out of hand. I ended up getting hurt, bleeding all over the front porch, but I didn't back down. The cops came, and her partner was arrested. He spent a couple of nights in jail. Sonia tried to come back the next day, crying, begging me to forgive her. She wanted to know where she was supposed to go. I was done, though. I told her to go to any of the other guys she'd been seeing or to her family or friends. It didn't matter. She had to leave. She kept resisting, trying to delay it, playing on my emotions, reminding me of the good times. But I stood firm. I told her she had to pack up her stuff and leave by the end of the day. I would help her, but I wasn't going to drag it out any longer. Finally, after hours of arguing, crying, and her hyperventilating to the point of throwing up, she caved. When she was driving away, it hit me. I felt a mixture of emotions. I was relieved to finally be free from this toxic cycle. But I was also deeply sad for what could have been, for the love that was lost, and for the future that would never happen. I blocked her on everything. Social media, my phone, everything. I burned anything that reminded me of her. She had been my first real love, and it was all a lie. It wasn't easy. I had to go through so much pain to get to this point, but in the end, I realized that I was better off without her. This relationship had destroyed my trust, my self-esteem, and my sense of self. At some point, I heard from a friend that Sonia had been let go from her nursing job for underperforming. Apparently, her colleagues had been complaining about her, and the hospital was investigating her. She had been stealing medication and failing to do her job properly. Turns out, I wasn't the only one who couldn't trust her. I don't know what happened to her after that, but I learned one of the hardest lessons in my life. I learned about the importance of trust, respect, and setting boundaries. I had to face the reality that love shouldn't come at the expense of your happiness, self-worth, or peace of mind. In the end, that relationship shaped me. It taught me what I wanted, and didn't want, in a partner. I learned to trust my instincts and never settle for less than I deserve. Now, as I look back, I can finally say I'm free. Looking back, I realize how much I lost during that time, how much I gave up for someone who never truly valued me. I spent years trapped in a toxic relationship, always trying to fix things, hoping for a change that never came. It took me a long time to realize that sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is to walk away. When Sonia finally left, I felt this weight lift off my chest. It was like I could breathe again, like I could finally focus on myself and my future without her dragging me down. I could actually start to rebuild my life, piece by piece. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The aftermath wasn't easy. For a while, I struggled with guilt. I second-guessed my decision, wondering if I'd done the right thing. Had I been too harsh? Had I misjudged her? But then I reminded myself of the reality, the long nights of silence, the broken promises, the emotional manipulation. Sonia wasn't just a bad partner, she was bad for me. I had tried everything to make it work, and I couldn't fix her. In the end, the only thing I could control was my own choices. I learned a lot from that relationship. I learned that love isn't about sacrifice at the expense of your well-being. It's not about carrying someone else's weight or constantly forgiving the unforgivable. Love should lift you up, not drain you. And self-respect is non-negotiable. If someone can't respect you, then they don't deserve your time. Since then, I've focused on myself. I've rebuilt my relationships with family and friends. I've started pursuing the things I've put off for years, things I never thought I'd have the time or energy for. Slowly, I began to rediscover who I really was before I lost myself in that relationship. I'm still not perfect. I've made mistakes, and I'm sure I'll make more. But I'm not afraid to make decisions for myself anymore. I've learned that I'm worth more than the dysfunction I was stuck in. I don't have to settle. I don't have to accept less than I deserve. If there's one thing I hope anyone reading this can take away, it's that you're not stuck. If you're in a relationship that's dragging you down, you don't have to stay. You don't have to fight for someone who isn't fighting for you. Your peace, your happiness, your self-respect, they matter. And you're the only one who can protect them. Sometimes, letting go is the hardest thing to do. But it can also be the most freeing. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. If you've been through something similar, I hope you can find the strength to move forward. If this helped you in any way, don't forget to follow my channel for more stories, advice, and real talk about life's tough moments. You're not alone in this.